Longest Day, Longest Night. Chapter 17. The Immediate Aftermath. By Rainbow Double Dash. The light that spread from Trixie's prone form and forced her awake was cool. It seemed to spread gradually more like a fog than actual light. As her eyes fluttered open, she saw the palace ruins around her, lit brilliant by the full moon's light. Moonlight! Trixie was almost instantly on all four hooves, and almost immediately thereafter had fallen back on her side after her body took the time to remind her that she was exhausted, drained both mentally and magically, and in all ways should not be trying to move as she just did. The blue unicorn took a few deep breaths to steady herself, then climbed onto her hooves at a more measured pace, casting her gaze upwards. Greeting her vision was a star-studded night sky, with a moon hanging high overhead. The moon looked different, however. It blazed on it was a new pattern that never had to be there before. A series of dark spots in the shape of a unicorn's head and horn. Even as Trixie watched, however, the pattern disappeared in a flash. Huh! Raindrop said. Trixie looked and saw her companions, her friends, beginning to pick themselves up as well. Wonder what that was all. Whoa! Raindrops had to leap backwards as two streaks, one mint green and white and the other pale green and blonde, whipped past her, nearly bowling her over. As it stood, she was still clipped and set staggering. Neither Dissy Doo nor Lyra seemed to notice as she rushed over to the collapsed foals and older ponies. Trixie's heart fluttered at the sight of so many fallen ponies. As she rushed forward, her remaining friends followed. She doubted that the elements could have possibly harmed them, but Corona hadn't seemed particularly cautious with her spell casting prior to the end, and even as those darks spread to her mind, however, they were quickly dispelled, as the merely unconscious foals and mares and stallions began to wake up, completely unharmed. Though for two of them, at least, that looked like it may have been only a temporary thing. Lyra had found Bonbon just as the mare had gotten her hooves under her, and impacted her with slightly less speed than an unladen train engine with its furnace burning hotter than the fires of Tartarus, sending the two tumbling and ending with Lyra pinning Bonbon to the ground, her lips pressed firmly to her lover's. Dinky Doo, meanwhile, once found by her mother, suffered a similar fate, scooped up into the Pegasus mare's forelegs and held tightly against Ditsy's chest. Ditsy showing no signs of ever intending to let her daughter go. Tears were in no short supply, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. Is everybody all right? Cheerily asked, as the rest of Trixie's friends caught up to the group. Cheerily moved quickly into the mass of foals, most of whom gathered around her familiar face, though several remained with the other adults, the ones lucky enough to have relatives kidnapped by Corona as well. Is any pony hurt? As the foals all shook their head, or confirmed that they were all right, though scared, Cheerily looked at Carrot Top and Raindrops, who were all amongst the mares and stallions. How about them? Fine. Raindrops announced as the adults all confirmed that they were all right. Every pony's okay. Trixie let out a sigh of relief at that, though her elation was short-lived, as he forced her sleep-deprived mind, being forced into unconsciousness was not the same thing as it turned out, to press forward. First, she searched the ground where she had fallen, and found her hat. It was covered in dirt and hoof marks, a little frayed and somewhat damp, but Trixie ignored this as she removed the tiara she still wore. All her friends were, in fact, wearing the jewelry that the elements had manifested as, and put her hat back on her head. After a moment of consideration, she slipped the tiara over it, and found to her surprise that the ornament fit rather snugly on her wizard's hat, almost as it were designed to be there. That moment, important part having been taken care of, Trixie turned her attentions to the next most important matter. Sakura, she said, trotting forward and looking around. Spike, where are they? There was a moment's pause before Raindrops took to the sky, looking around. I don't see them, she announced after a moment of searching. Pony feathers! No use searching for them now. She paused as a flash of silver-white light spread across the courtyard. The ponies there all froze, looking in horror towards the flash's source. The ruined tower of the palace, the same place that Corona had fallen when the beam from the elements had finally overtaken her. It was enough to tear Lyra's eyes away from Bonbon's, and for Dissy Doo to squeeze her daughter even harder. No! Carrot Top whispered. No! Trixie swallowed, as he looked to the formerly kidnapped mares and stallions, then to the foals, then to her friends. She grit her teeth. Come on! She insisted, setting off at a gallop. The other 5 followed her quickly, grim determination settling in. Reaching the tower was easy. Climbing it was only slightly harder. The stairs were steep, but they were also stone, and had not worn away over time. The stairs they climbed brought the 6 elements of harmony inside after their climb. They ended up standing in a wide chamber, its roof having long disappeared over time. At its far end was a pedestal set in front of a shattered glass-stained window. Standing just inside the entrance, her back to the elements, was a pony, taller than most stallions, deep blue coloration, with an animate mane tail that were flowing like water, casting the reflection of the star-filled sky. Possessed of both wings and horn, with a cutie mark of a black pits of night, broken by a white crescent moon. Luna! Trixie exclaimed, forgetting the formal titles. The princess turned up in time to see Trixie rush over to her, though the unicorn skidded to a halt before she got too close, as memories of her last conversation with the alicorn came rushing back. Her mouth opened and closed a few times before sound came out, and Luna took the time to look at Trixie, then to each of her friends behind her, who had all bowed in respect. Hello, princess. Luna inclined her head. Hello, Trixie. She responded after a moment. To the blue unicorn's surprise, Luna seemed just as unsure as Trixie herself as to where this conversation should be going. After a long bout of silence, Luna looked at the tiara on Trixie's head. Element of magic, she noted. Yes, Trixie nodded. It took me a little bit, but I finally figured out what you meant when you said that the 6th element was right beside me. Luna grinned slightly, though it was forced. That's good, she decided. Trixie scuffed a hoof, buzzing around at the moment. So, how did you know? Trixie asked. Know what? Know about them, Trixie responded, waving a hoof to her friends. How did you know they'd be beside me 5 years ago? Did you know that Corona was going to escape? Was this some plan or something? Luna paused, a look of genuine confusion overcoming her features. It was matched, after several seconds, by Trixie's own expression. Trixie, Luna explained, I met your cutie mark. Ha! A magenta voice exclaimed. Trixie wasn't sure how a voice could be magenta, but glancing behind her, she saw Cheerilee grinning broadly. The other 5 had risen from their bows, looking relieved that the silver white flash had apparently just been Luna returning from exile, and not the signal to start another round of Corona. Trixie turned her back to her mentor. But, she attended, but my cutie mark isn't beside me! It's on me! On your side, Luna noted, but not beside! This is just like saying, always moves but never wanders, riddle! Achoo! Carrot Top signed in. She, along with the other ponies, made their way forward, so they were standing next to Trixie. The blue unicorn glared at Carrot Top. Trees don't move! Yes, they do, Dizzy 2 explained. They blow in the wind. That doesn't count as moving! And even if it did, it's not always windy, so they don't always move! Trixie, I heard that riddle when I was 1, maybe? Raycross asked. You're overanalyzing it. Every pony knows that answer, Lyra added. I know it too. It's just a stupid answer! Luna looked between the 6 of them, a far more genuine smile on her features at the antics of the ponies before her. Congratulations, she offered, starting to incline her head, then pausing as she thought the better of it. She instead backed away a few paces, and bowed to the 6. The sight was enough to leave them speechless. You saved Equestria, Luna continued, all of you, working together. More than that, you have earned the elements of harmony. No, you are the elements now. You restored them from their innate states, a feat even I couldn't have accomplished. And you did this in order to stand against a monster, against the tyrant sun, one of the worst enemies Equestrians ever had. Luna lifted herself from her bow. Her expression changed, smile dropping. Instead, a look of melancholy came over her features as she turned around, looking down the length of the tower's room as she had on first entering. Now, excuse me. There is someone I must talk to. Celestia was in a considerable amount of pain, but she was alive, She was whole, as she was not trapped once more in her son. As the alicorn forced her eyes open, finding herself behind a stone pillar, she began laughing, ignoring that it hurt to do so. Not... This is not even the Luna's elements can stop the sun. You are typically the more powerful one, Luna admitted. Celestia's eyes widened, and she spun around, ignoring the ache in her body as she lost out with magic, calling down a solar flare that burned her treacherous sister's body to a crisp. Or that was what was supposed to happen. Instead, only a few golden sparks escaped her horn, and even that took everything Celestia had. She nearly fell to her knees from the effort, but she forced herself to remain standing, though her head drooped. Pink locks of hair fell down over her eyes. Her fiery mane was gone. Her eyes would no longer be glowing either, she knew, instead having to revert to normal-looking ones with pink irises. And it was just her, or was Luna taller than she used to be? No, the opposite. She was shorter than Luna, the consequence of having so much magic pulled from her at once. She would still be taller than many of the stallions, but not all. Celestia grit her teeth and flared her wings in challenge. So, sister! Come, to finish me what the elements could not! The sun again! I will escape. I will always escape. And though it takes me 1,000 years again, or 10,000, or 100,000, Equestria is mine, and it still belongs to me! Luna just looked at her, and a terrible clarity gripped Celestia as she realized what she would do if she were Luna, and she had just heard Celestia complain that. No! The alicorn exclaimed, stumbling backwards, springing furiously as he tried to take to the air. They lifted her for a moment, but then their strength gave out, as she fell once more to the ground. Her hose scrabbled the stone floor beneath her as she picked herself up and running, toward the exit to this ancient place, and finding her way blocked by the corrupted elements. No! Celestia proclaimed again, backing away, eyes wide, nearly as wide as their own as the elements took in her changed appearance, her mundane mane and tail, her shrunken form, looking away once more for some place to run. She saw her sister coming out from behind a pillar, as Celestia had moments ago, the same look on her face. Celestia grit her teeth, tried to call upon all her magic. Sparks once more flew from her horn, even as she backed away from the steadily advancing Luna. Thou cannot! She exclaimed. I am the sun! I am thy queen! Thy elder! Thou hast no right to challenge me! Equestria is mine! Mine to do as I please! Celestia, Luna tried, as is every pony in it! She was certain her mane and tail ignited even for the barest of moments. As he continued to back away from Luna, the ponies are like gnats! They need protection! A strong hoof! Celestia! Lest chaos reign! They are weak and immortal and do not know the dangers that surround them! Celestia had backed herself against the stone pillar. She tried to move around it, but Luna was there, in front of her, faster than her considerably weaker senses could allow. Wings spread wide and creating a wall. Without me, Celestia could continue, the griffins, the dragons, discord, Tyrek, thou wert there, Luna. Thou knowest the world as I do. How canst thou deny me thy right? My cause is just, my Tia! The name cut through Celestia's tirade. Her defenses, like a hot knife through butter. She blinked several times. The word had processed no magic in itself, but how long? How long since her sister had called her that? Longer than a millennium, certainly. She gazed upwards at Luna, who returned her stare evenly. For the first time, Celestia looked at her sister, saw not nerves resolve, not treacherous intent, but sadness, resignation. Celestia lunged with her horn. Luna blinked, and Celestia's entire body was wrapped in a midnight blue aura. Her horn toss stopped before coming anywhere near Luna's throat. Don't, Luna said. Her voice cracked. She paused, closing her eyes before starting without opening them. Please, Tia, don't make me do this again. 1,000 years ago, I thought I lost you forever, and it destroyed me. But if this is going to turn into some sort of cycle. The princess paused once more before opening her eyes and looking Celestia in the face. We were meant to rule together, sister. No, Celestia shouted. It's mine! All of it! Mine! Everything! Mine! All mine! Luna retreated several steps at the exclamation, eyes wide as Celestia began struggling against Luna's tug and that grip. Tia, you're not well. You need help. Let me... Release me! Release me, or next time I will not spare thee! Thou shalt burn! Luna blinked several times more, mouth hanging slightly open as she watched Celestia struggle, and cry out in anger. The princess was breathing heavily at the sight, and looked like she was on the verge of collapsing and just dying from the spot from sorrow at what her sister had become. After several long moments, however, her eyes narrowed as she forced her breathing to steady. Corona, she proclaimed, once more ignoring the alicorn's eyes of protest. You leave me no choice. It will once more be banished to the heart of the sun. Escape if you can, but next time I will be ready, and I will be prepared. Celestia spat at Luna. Thou shalt suffer! She shouted, even as Luna's horn began to go by her. You shall all suffer for denying me my right! Luna's horn was going bright enough now to transcend its normal blue aurora, it glowing white instead. She opened her eyes, similarly gleaming with power, when a grid-teased town of particles passed in front of her face. The princess stumbled backwards and out of the cloud, coughing and sputtering at whatever she had inhaled. Her concentration slipped and Celestia fell out of the floor, out of Luna's magical grip, while Luna's own magic spun wildly out of control, sending out jets of light and power in right directions. Several nearly struck the elements, but their accessories glowed, creating a barrier against the unintentional assault, protecting them. Celestia lifted herself to her hooves, intent on charging forward with her horn once more, when she felt the presence of a pony beside her. Glancing, she saw Zecora, once more wearing her own brown cape, and with an unconscious spike on her back. Quickly, your majesty! Zecora exclaimed as she reached into her cloak and produced a vial of liquid that somehow managed to be striped blue or red and unstopped it. This blue will restore power to you. Celestia didn't need to hear anything else, finding the end of the bottle and throwing her head back, swallowing the concoction in one fell gulp, ignoring its bitter taste. She felt it work almost immediately, but pathetically. It gave her only a fraction of her total power. Next to her sister, she would still be as weak as a foal, and now Luna looked like she was recovering from whatever Zecora had done, glaring angrily at the zebra and her sister. Celestia was a very old alicorn, however, and however much of it felt like a slap to her face, she knew when to fall back, make a tactical withdrawal, and any other euphemism one cared to think of for run away! Her horn glowed, still gold, not the pure white she preferred, and she wrapped herself in teleportation magic. Almost as an afterthought, she included Zecora, and by extension Spike in her spell as well. That made it twice that the zebra had forestalled disaster. Celestia would not let a follower like that go to waste. As for Spike, well, one never knew when a dumb brute muscle would be useful, and Spike was so stout with Celestia forced him to age prematurely. In a flash of light, Celestia was gone, but she would return. Chapter 18. The End of Longest Day, Longest Night. Celebrating would come later. For now, hours later, as the moon left its high position in the sky and began a gradual, measured, and above all proper descent towards the horizon, all Ponyville could do was focus on the return of their loved ones. Most of Ponyville, anyway. Trixie nodded her head slightly. It's actually in better condition than I thought it'd be, she remarked as she picked her way through her living room, careful not to step on broken glass or splintered wood. The hole raindrops had made in her window remained, of course, but it had been added to a dozen times over by ponies that looked like they were literally tearing up the floorboards looking for Trixie. Lunamoon was somewhat less cautious, a scowl on her features as she surveyed the damage, deepening when she saw that the storybook mural on the wall that had contained the legend of Celestia's fall and Corona's rise had largely been left untouched. This, she said, is unacceptable. Whatever the massive issue with you, this house, she paused as her gaze centered on the hole in the ceiling of the room, was property of the crown. Trixie looked at Luna. It's just a house, Trixie remarked. She forced herself to be cheerful. They were angry and scared. And taking it out on wood and plaster is better than taking it out on each other, right? Trixie paused a moment where she thought, or me. Luna's scowl persisted for several long minutes. Her gaze drifted back to the mural once more, as he had stepped up to it, looking into the painted eyes of Corona. The wall stared back emotionlessly. You're right, Luna admitted with a sigh. Trixie watched Luna closely. Finally, she asked a question that had to be asked. Are you alright? Of course I'm not! Luna snapped. The unicorn didn't buzz at the burst of emotion, nor the glare that followed, albeit only for a few moments before Luna reined herself in, taking in a deep breath and letting it out slowly. Every history text talks about Corona, and a revolution against her, and my brave and noble sacrifice by sending her to the sun. But every pony seems to have selectively forgotten what happened next! Every pony but me, and I am trying very hard to stop myself from having a relapse. I was as bad as Corona. Trixie blinked at that. I don't think that's possible. Luna glared at her again. I was worse! The princess insisted. Corona was a tyrant. I was absolute and utterly useless at affairs of state because I spent the better part of 12 years in a drunken stupor trying to block out what I had done. Corona had forced me to. I would let days pass without raising the sun. It would let it early as the moon struck me. Probably only raised it at all because barley and grapes need sunlight. I would have raised the stars however I wished. I would descend upon a settlement and make the inhabitants wait on my every wish, and amuse myself by manipulating their lives until I got favor and misfortune as I desired. I did anything to make myself forget, and ponies everywhere suffered for it. Luna snorted as he looked away from Trixie. Trixie considered. For whatever reason, she wasn't actually surprised by Luna's admission. Did you hurt any pony? Countless thousands. I mean in a permanent way. An unforgivable way. Rather than you just being a big drunk jerk wandering the countryside. Luna stifled a burst of laughter at that. Trixie's statement had made Luna sound like she had been a sorority head, leading a hazy ritual than more than anything. I have not forgiven myself, Luna stated. Princess. The alicorn shook her head. No, I was capricious and melancholy, not a monster. But I was essentially a little discord. A storm of chaos followed me wherever I went. Trixie had made her way toward an overturned bookcase. It had been full of fairly generic collection of books, mostly classes like Foldnap, the history of the decline and fall of the Griffin Empire. Trixie had only added a single book to the collection since moving in, and breathed a sigh of relief as she found her copy of Don Racanate unharmed. What snapped you out of it? A family of dragons decided that Equestria was weak and ripe for the pillaging. I happened to be nearby as they crossed the border and convinced them that they were mistaken. But after that, I realized what I had been doing. That I was letting my pain and suffering become the pain and suffering of others. But you did realize, Trixie noted. Corona didn't. She still hasn't. That makes you better. And you're right. Every pony seems to have forgotten that bit of history. It must not have been as bad as you make it out to be. That didn't seem to improve Luna's mood. She breathed in deeply and let out her breath slowly. Celeste, Corona, will be weak for a long time. She will recover the depth of her magical reserves in just a few days, but the power will take longer. Perhaps 5 or 6 months, but she will not be quiet in that time. The alicorn ruffled her wings a few times as she thought, then looked to Trixie. We shall return to Catalot! Trixie blinked a few times at that. Lee? Luna grinned slightly. It was forced, but only because Luna didn't seem to be in much of a mood. The intent behind it was genuine enough. Trixie, you saved Equestria. Saved the lives of some 5 dozen captives Corona have taken. Surely you don't think that I'm still angry with you. She looked away. I was lying when I said I didn't banish you here. I did. It is an excellent appointment in a way, but it is also small and easily forgotten, and has little standing in the Night Court. Sending you here was an intended as a punishment. Luna looked back to Trixie. The Night Court is to strict bureaucracy. You have to climb through its ranks yourself, Trixie, to get noticed yourself. Collect your own favors for presentation. But there was no need for me to send you here, where you essentially be locked out of the Night Court. I will arrange for proper appointments elsewhere. a junior advisory position in Mainhead, or New Orleans, or a minister to one of the protectorate states like Kavala or Prefix, somewhere where, if you're clever enough, you could actually get noticed. I was hoping I could stay, Trixie interrupted. Luna looked surprised at Trixie's desire as the unicorn pressed on. I mean, I made a horrible first impression on everybody. The Regency is still a bit of a fixer-upper. Ponyville is kind of a wasteland of Equestria. I'm not sure about the mental stability of some of the ponies here. He trailed off as he realized that, as he continued listing all the flaws of Ponyville, the two would be there all night. Anyway, my friends are here. It's close to Canterlot, so I can even attend the night court directly from time to time. And given that I'm your apprentice and I sort of just say to Equestria, I don't think being noticed will be a problem. Luna considered Trixie carefully, before nodding. Very well. She said as he turned around to leave. Trixie followed, both of them exiting through the front door of the Residency. The front aperture, at least. The door itself had not been able to be found out of a sense of tradition, if not necessity, given the numbers of other options Ponyville had seen to fit Trixie with. Stay at a hotel for now. I will arrange for the Residency to Paris. Trixie nodded at that, though a second later she flinched. About that, I might have spent my entire stipend while I was trying to, well, spite you. Luna glanced at Trixie incredulously. How? Weather for hire ponies are cheap, especially when they're rushed down for Cloudsdale. But they ended up being superfluous. Their contract specifies no refunds. Luna shrugged. I suppose I could float you some bits, she remarked as her horn glowed. With a pop, a small cloth bag appeared in front of Trixie, who caught it analytically. Trixie was puzzled a moment before sighing. It was you. The random pony I stopped on the street and paid 30 bits to find Lyra. She considered as she remembered Luna's trick prior to the official beginning of the longest night. One of you, anyway. Indeed. I will arrange for more money to be sent to you, but that is a loan. I expect to be paid back. Trixie blinked. Why? You're the princess. You haven't paid for anything accessories. Millennial, even. Luna offered a grin, a more honest one than any she had been able to produce for some time. Maybe that's because, as the princess, I never get paid. It was a novel experience, and I had plans for those bits. What plans? Luna didn't answer as the two reached the Residency's front gate and stepped out into the street. Previously, it had been nighttime for the first time, and what Luna had told him was nearly 20 hours of daylight, the longest day in Equestria. I just got the title, ladies and gentlemen! History, though far short of Corona's promised dead days of uninterrupted sunshine. Every pony had been asleep, or more likely, lying awake, fearing what Corona was doing to their loved ones. Now the entire town was up and active in their homes, the sheer elation of having their foals and loved ones return to them in almost an unpalatable sensation. Though that probably wouldn't persist for as long as exhaustion set in, and every pony got some much-deserved rest. Luna turned to Trixie as they stopped. Now then, Trixie, she said, you have friends here, and that's good. But you have those in the past, too, and managed to drive them away. You must try hard not to do that. I know, Trixie said, images of previous friends she had in Canterlot drifting by in her mind's eye. Sea Swirled, Amethyst Star, Chocolate Tail. She nodded, looking up at her hat. The element of magic was still there. It was, perhaps, a bit gaudy, and Trixie didn't think she'd make a habit of wearing it all the time. Probably just for formal occasions or whenever she needed to save the world. The latter of which probably would hopefully be a rare occurrence. Friendship is magic and all that. Luna blinked. Not the phrasing I would have used, she admitted, but completely valid in its own way. But I don't mean you should keep your friends just to keep the elements of focusing. That would be to keep the elements focusing. That would be a hollow, meaningless thing. More than anything else. You should be happy. Trixie nodded. I'll try, she promised, bowing. And I'll see you soon, Princess Luna. The alicorn inclined her head in acknowledgement, then thought better of it and instead came forward and pulled Trixie into a deep embrace. Trixie remained not a particularly touchy-feely pony of Flint's, but after a moment returned to show affection. Eventually, Luna pulled away and closed her eyes, horn glowing, In a moment, she had become a nebulous, star-studded mass that rose into the night sky, and then shot off. Trixie watched Luna disappear, and then looked to the bag of bits she held. A thought occurred to her that hadn't before, but one in hindsight she really should have considered first. Does Ponyville even have a hotel? She asked and paused again. Would I even be able to check in at this hour? I wonder if Carrot Top has a spare bedroom. Well, folks, that was Longest Night and Longest Day, the first episode of the Lunaverse. And I have to say that, wait, Alchemy Student, stop. Trixie, I'm not Alchemy Student on this channel, I'm Martial Art Fruit user. Whatever. Don't you think the audience needs a little bit of closure? Closure on the great and powerful Trixie! Don't you think they're wondering where Trixie stayed after this episode? Well, I don't think they really... The audience must be recompensed! They need to know the story of Trixie's day! Well, okay, but I was about to... Listen, Master Electric user, you just read the next episode, and Trixie will be pressing up for the next fic. Ta-ta. Why do I even let her into my office? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the third chapter. Episode 1 of the Lunaverse. A Very Long Night. By Black Belt. I hope you enjoy. Trixie stared at the structure that was her home, office, and workplace in Ponyville. It was a simple, thatched-roof building. The only thing differentiating it from the rest of the houses in Ponyville was a simple iron fence that surrounded the property, and a simple sign in the front yard stating it was the residence of the representative of the Night Court. Trixie had not been in Ponyville long, but she had already grown to like her new home. What she did not like was the fact that the structure was now thrashed. The roof was caved in on one side, her nice iron fence was bent, scorch marks would cover the front yard. Scorch marks?! And Trixie didn't even know where the simple little sign was. And the window was completely crashed in, like several ponies had thrown bricks through it. A suspicion she had confirmed earlier was he spied a small pile of brick in the main room. Trixie sighed. She walked through the residence, over debris, until she reached her destination, her office. Looking around the assorted books strewn about the floor, her eyes eventually eyed what she was looking for. A map of Ponyville. The map was quickly enveloped in a blue magic aurora and lifted in front of Trixie's eyes. She intended to leave right then and there, until she spied something else. A town registry. A record from the last census, including names and places for the residents of the whole town. Trixie doubted she would need it, but this is just in case something goes wrong. It seems everything else has been lately. She joked to herself. As she slipped the registry into the saddlebag she wore, she slowly scanned the map, eventually landing on a plot of land listed Ponyville Motel. This would be simple. For your convenience, the Ponyville Motel is being remodeled. Thank you for your time. Trixie stared at the sign. Behind it, a half-constructed building, with construction equipment doing the rest of the property. That is not how the word convenience works! Trixie yelled. I'd better head to Carrot Top's place. Maybe she could spare a bed. She muttered, cursing the fact that she was still slushy, and it was hard to walk in snow to the ground. Trixie was thankful when Carrot Top's farm came into view. Thankful she would be able to spend the rest of her weary bones and get some much-needed sleep. When she eventually reached the front door, she stopped a moment to catch her breath before knocking on the door. 30 seconds later, after no response, she knocked, a bit louder this time. After another 30 seconds, she began yelling and frantically walking around the house, desperately looking through the windows for a sign of her orange friend. Carrot Top, are you there? Still no response. She briefly considered just breaking it and apologizing for it later, but decided against it. That's not something friends would do, even if Trixie desperately needed shelter. She pulled out the town registry, and wondering if the universe had planned this, scanned it to see where Disney's house was. Wait a minute. That can't be right, she muttered as she walked to the building the registry spelled out, even though she considered it a wild goose chase. The post office came into sight. Trixie was still convinced the registry was wrong, and Dizzy Dude did not, in fact, live there. But desperation, curiosity, and fatigue is not a good combination for the brain. She felt foolish as she lifted up her hoof, ready to knock on the door, until a light cough coming in from behind the building distracted her. Trixie quietly crept until the backyard of the post office revealed itself to her. There was a large fire pit sitting behind the post office, and a fire blazed inside it, illuminating the area. Sitting on the beds a few yards away sat Ditsy Doo and her daughter. A warm blanket draped over them. Mama, the young unicorn filly said drowsily, I think I can go back to sleep now. Her mother nodded lightly, both eyes resting on Dinky. Alright, Muffin. I'll just put out the fire. She began to stand up until her daughter spoke some more. But is it alright if I sleep in your bed tonight? I don't want the monster to get me again. Upon the light of fire, Trixie thought she could see tears. Dizzy wrapped her forelegs around Dinky in a tight hug. It's okay. I won't let anyone get you. I'll make sure that monster won't get anyone ever again, Dizzy whispered. It was here that Trixie was left with two choices. She could just walk away, since it was obvious that Ditsy needed her daughter, and Dinky needed her mother, and look for a bed to sleep in elsewhere, or she could bother them and... Trixie shook her head. See, I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror if I did that, she thought to herself as she walked away, scanning the registry once again for a place to hang her hat. Trixie figured Lyra would be staying with her mare friend Bon Bon. Or at least she figured it out once she noted that Lyra's name didn't even appear on the registry. Trixie figured that Lyra had been living in Canterlot for the last 3 years, so that made sense. She just hoped that, between the two of them, that would mean 2 beds would be occupied. Trixie hoped that Bon Bon had a third bed or a couch. Trixie was quickly broken out of her worries when a scream split through the air. After scanning around for a moment, Trixie determined the source of the scream. Bon Bon's confectionarium. Fearing the worst. Spies, zebras, monsters, pirates, did a zebra! She ran down the street, her previous fatigue forgotten, hoping she would get there in time to help. She had gotten to the front door, preparing to tear it down until another scream split through the air. Lyra. Trixie froze, her mind having trouble processing exactly what she had just heard. Her ears were picking up other noises, moans, squeaks, and other noises Trixie really wished her brain could ignore. Her senses had finally decided her sanity had been insulted enough and ran away very, very fast. It did not stop running for at least 5 minutes. Panting, short of breath, Trixie finally gave herself a moment to rest. She saw a bench, which she sat on, thankful for the chance to rest her hooves. You think, Trixie thought out loud, that ponies that loud would have invested soundproofing or something? She slowly grabbed the registry for her saddlebags, scanning for another place she could sleep, praying to Luna herself that she would not have to get in range of that horrible, horrible noise again. As she scanned the map, she was thankful her next destination was a short ways away, and notably far away from that accursed kid place. I guess you folks could say that there was some sweets being licked. Boo! Boo! Get off the stage, Ryder! As she got up and walked, ironically feeling refreshed from her fleeting terror, a strange thought entered her mind. Shirley was right! She does have a strong command of the Equestrian tongue! Shut up, brain! Trixie yelled. Luckily, thankfully, Luna blessedly so. Raindrops' house was a normal, somewhat on the small side, but big enough to allow for her guests. Lights were on, and Trixie couldn't hear any horrible, horrible noises. Please let this be normal, please let this be normal, Trixie thought to herself as she knocked on the door. A moment passed, and the door opened, revealing a lanky young colt, his fur a muted yellow, with a messy green mane, and a particularly dumb look in his eyes. Worried for a moment, she may have accidentally gotten the wrong house. Trixie asked as nicely as her voice could muster. Is Raindrops here? The cult stared up at Trixie, the dim look ever present in his eyes. Then, as if someone flipped a switch, the look in his eyes brightened up, and a wise smile appeared on his face. Oh wow! You're the great and powerful Trixie! I loved your show! Yeah, you are awesome! He yelled, in what some ponies would consider a dove-sounding voice. Can I have your autograph? He asked, his eyes shining in expectation. Trixie remembered something her grandfather told her many years ago. It does not matter how tired you may be. It doesn't matter how bad your day has been. It does not matter that the only thing you want to do is sit down and relax. When you're a performer, your fans will think the world of you. And the worst feeling is the feeling of letting even one of them down. Showtime! But, of course, the great and powerful Trixie would be honored to give an autograph to an adoring fan. Trixie loudly proclaimed, ignoring the fatigue that ran for her. The great and powerful Trixie only asks you bring a quill and a scroll she may sign. Trixie didn't think it possible, but the smile grew even wider as he ran back into the house, leaving his front door open, as he heard what sounded like the noise of someone messily searching through a desk drawer. Hey Snails, what's taking so long? Raindrops began, then noticing the open door with Trixie standing on her doorstep. Hey, I don't remember telling you where I lived, Raindrops remarked, more confused than anything else. You didn't. I looked it up, Trixie flatly replied, if that explained everything. Oh. Raindrops quickly decided that it was a bit creepy that someone could look up her address so easily. Why? Well, Trixie began before being interrupted by a very excited Snails, holding a scrap of paper that looked like it was used to hold chewing gum, and a quill that looked like it was chewed by something with far too many teeth. He looked up at Trixie, his eyes with a glimmer. Encore performance. Trixie grabbed both the quill and the scrap of paper and twirled them around in the air, making them fly around much like a pair of butterflies, all while keeping her eyes on the ground. After a few seconds of that, she gently floated both items back down to Snails, then revealed the scrap that had been signed. To the great and powerful Trixie's biggest fan, Snails. He stared at the paper, his mouth hung wide open. Then suddenly, he made noise similar to that to a squeak. He grasped the paper and a shaky yell of huge magic roar, bolted into the house, yelling, Snips is going to be so jealous! Was the showmanship really necessary? Raindrops asked, raising an eyebrow. It was for a fan. They expect big things from me, Trixie answered, yawning. So, that was your little brother? Trixie asked, stifling another yawn. Raindrops nodded. He's visiting from your parents' house? Raindrops shook her head. The implications of that answer took a second to click in Trixie's mind. You still live with your parents? Trixie yelled, a little bit louder than she had intended. Yes, and? Raindrops answered, her then until slightly confused stature shifting to a more aggressive stance. Trixie scared for an answer. You seem so independent, I thought you would have headed out by now. Raindrops suddenly softened, satisfied with the answer. Well, yeah, that was my little brother Snails. Raindrops closed her eyes and thought for a moment, considering what to say next. You know, earlier, he wouldn't shut up about the show you put on. And now he thinks you're some kind of superhero. Was he... Trixie started, not so sure how to ask the question on her mind. No, Corona didn't kidnap him either. Good thing too, otherwise I probably would have tried bucking her right in the face. Consequences be damned! A slight smile met Raindrop's face, as if she was considering the situation, but it disappeared quickly as it had appeared. Trixie didn't doubt that Raindrops would be willing to fight Corona in one-to-one combat. Anyway, what brings you here so late? My house has a bunch of holes in it, so I need a place to stay. At least for tonight, until I can find something more permanent tomorrow. About that. Raindrops' voice suddenly sounded shaky, which Trixie thought was so irregular. We, don't exactly have a lot of room. Trixie cocked her eyebrow at that, until looking at the house for a few seconds. She suddenly realized the main reason she was surprised that Raindrops living with her parents It wasn't because of Raindrops herself, because the house looked like it was made for only one pony. Not to mention, Snail seems to be utterly sleep-proof. It would probably keep you up all night with questions about what happened in the forest, your life at Terrell, and anything he could think of. Trixie nodded to Raindrops. I understand. Thank you. Trixie turned and walked off, once again pulling out her best friend and worst enemy for the night, the town registry. The 5th time's the charm, right? Final house, final friend. Surely has to pull through, right? Trixie knocked on the door, praying to Luna that someone would answer. She heard a small shuffle and the door opened, revealing Terry. Trixie was about to ask about a bed, but then a familiar smell hit her nostrils. Hey, Trixie! Terry stirred. Are you here for the party? Trixie looked inside the schoolteacher's house and was shocked at what she saw. There were bookshelves filled with books, but sitting along those spots were bottles that, Trixie assumed as nearly a few hours ago, held all manners of alcohol. Trixie stared at Cheerly. If Pony endures indeed. Actually, Cheerly, I wasn't here for a party, but But come on! I just saved the world and told off a god and lived! Woo! The dark magenta mare took a swig from a nearby bottle to punctuate the line. Woot! Trixie sighed. Cheerly, my house has the consistency of Skyrosland cheese right now. Can I crash here for the night? Trixie was caught off guard by the change in Cheerly's expression. Why would you need to stay here when you could just stay at Town Hall? What? Under the Equestria Employee Protection Act of 860, Section 3, any government employees, including representatives, are guaranteed housing and board in the event their existing residence is temporarily unlivable. Trixie blinked, wondering if the fatigue was finally causing her to hallucinate. Are you sure you're drunk? Furthermore, Cheerly continued, her speech slowly becoming more coherent, under the Equestria Government Initiative of 532, the main government facility of a town, in this case being Town Hall, must always have at least one employee on duty at any time, so that problems may arise out of conventional hours may be addressed and reported. Trixie stared at her friend, waiting for the laugh that would punctuate the punchline. After realizing that the drunk was completely serious, Trixie turned away and walked to Town Hall. You have got to be kidding me, she muttered to herself. Cheerly's burp roared through the air. Have a nice night, Trixie! Cheerly yelled, waving her hoof in the air. Trixie dragged herself to Town Hall, her body slowly giving in to all the punishment it had received over the past 3 days. Just a little closer. This night will be done. A night I could have avoided if I had studied bylaws better. I need to pay more attention to those things. Eventually, she reached the doors of Town Hall and threw them open. She briefly looked around the lobby. Some paintings, a magazine rack full of magazine older than Trixie was, and a pony sitting behind a counter, their identity obscured by a newspaper. Excuse me, but I was told I could get some help. My house is currently unusable, and I need a place to stay. I was told that the newspaper came down, revealing the identity of the pony working at the receptionist. Carrot Top! Trixie yelled, convinced he was hallucinating. Hi, Trixie. How are you tonight? Sighed. Hi, Trixie. How are you tonight? Carrot Top answered, a smile on her face. I thought you were a farmer. Why are you working Town Hall? I am a farmer, but since Town Hall always needs someone to manage, the town usually takes volunteers, and I signed up for this week a while back because I thought I would need the money. So, how can I help you? Carrot Top answered in what Trixie could only assume was an attempt to sound professional. And this is the end note on a weird, wild night, Trixie thought to herself. My house is unavailable. I need a place to stay. Since I'm a representative of the Night Court, Town Hall is supposed to supply me with a place to stay until my house is livable. In a movement that appeared far too normal, Carrot Top grabbed a small key from her drawer and dropped it on the counter. That door to the left. Let's bring back the key to the fat cow in the morning. Have a nice night! Trixie stared down at the key until bringing her gaze back to Carrot Top. How often does this key get used? Ponyville borders the other three forests. Take a wild guess. Stop questioning, Trixie. Just take the key, lie down, and get to sleep. Trixie thought. Good night, Carrot Top. Trixie yawned, grabbing the key in a barely functioning magical roar as she walked down the hall to the door Carrot Top had pointed out. Trixie thought she had heard Carrot Top also wish a good night, but Trixie was too tired to notice. Upon opening the door, Trixie's eyes came upon the most beautiful thing Trixie had seen all night. A very comfortable-looking bed. Trixie was asleep the moment her head hit the pillow. The town of Ponyville was on fire. Everything was ablaze, and Pony ran in terror. In the middle of town, Trixie was trapped in a ring of fire that blocked all possible choices of escape. Her captor only stared as Trixie suffered. We will defeat you, Corona! Trixie yelled at the alicorn demon. My friends will get here, and then you'll never be able to hurt anyone again! Corona sat on a throne made of gold. Glimmering in the fire's light, Corona herself remained silent, only staring back. Well, aren't you afraid? They'll bring the elements of harmony, and then Luna can send you straight to the sun, where you belong! Corona rose slowly to her fall, walking towards Trixie, walking through the flames themselves parting, letting Corona through. She came to stand right in front of Trixie, staring down, a look of anger upon her face. Corona then drew herself up, taking a deep breath, and screamed at Trixie. Oh, Lyra! Oh! Ah! Trixie woke up screaming, covered in her cold sweat, her heart racing. Trixie was vaguely aroused at the sound of hostess for town hall, until Carrot Top burst in the room. Trixie, are you alright? Carrot Top sounded worried. A few moments passed as Trixie breathed in deeply, trying to calm herself down. Then she very calmly turned to Carrot Top and spoke. I'd like to report a noise violation. The end. Cue the happy end credits! There, Trixie. Satisfied? Intolerable Trixie, thanks you. You may continue with your review. Well, that was longest day, longest night, and what can I say? This is one of the examples of how to do an alternate universe story and how to give us the main six in the style. If you look at some of my comments on the chapters themselves, you can see what I really thought about it. But I just really like the setup, the alternate way of seeing how much Trixie can affect the Lunaverse 6, like Twilight affects the main 6, worked really well to this. And what's more, the characters didn't feel like they were knockoffs of the main 6. Carrot Top is different from Rarity. Lyra is different from Rainbow Jazz. Cheerilee is different from Pinkie Pie. Josh is, of course, different from Applejack, and Trixie is different from Twilight, and Ditzy is different from Fluttershy. I know that some of the complaints are about the main 6, but as far as I'm concerned, that just adds to it, as we see how the main 6 are affected when you take out that important element. Kind of like how we know that without Usagi in Sailor Moon, the Sailor Sensei's lives would be miserable. I liked Corona. She was done really well as a villain, and I don't even mind Sakura that much as a temporary antagonist. All in all, this is a great way to start and a great introduction to the Lunaverse. Next time on the Lunaverse, we'll have something. Well, you'll see. But for right now, next time, tomorrow, join me for we will have a very special adventure. Here's the trailer. Luna has been poisoned. Her assailant has disappeared, and there is only a small flower out there in the distance that could possibly revive her. A potion that could restore her to normal. Ability to restore her magic. And the only way that Luna has a chance of being saved is in the hopes of the one we call loyalty. Rainbow Dash, you are now officially a member of the Equestrian Royal Guard. Wait, what? Starring Shining Armor. Gentlemen, I would like to have a few words with you. Rainbow Dash. Don't worry, Celestia, I've got this. I'll be there back before Luna even notices she's sick. Process as we present loyal liars where loyalties lie. Please enjoy, and I'll be seeing you next time.